every single road in this region. As you just heard in Ursula's newscast, this has gone from something we've been telling you on a precise timetable for 18 years, that it was a 20-year plan to toll every single road in the region. And Jenny Durkin has now declared that she wants to toll Seattle streets before the end of her first term. So it is precisely on the 20-year timetable that I told you about in 2001, when I had sources that explained exactly how they were going to accomplish this goal of a massive tax increase on you and me, designed specifically to hit the working class people of this region the absolute hardest. And it will be a crushing blow for people, especially in the suburbs, who, Ursula was correct in her newscast. This is going to go to a public vote, but the people who are going to be most affected by this, they will not get a vote on it. It is going to be a Seattle vote that is going to hit the working class people of Snohomish and Pierce counties, of suburban King County, who have to drive into the city. They are the ones who are going to get absolutely crushed by this. And what we're seeing now is clear signs of what we've been telling you about. They said, oh yeah, we just want to do a per mile tax to replace the gas tax. That's one of the massive lies that they have been telling us. But at the Seattle DOT website, they specifically say that this is designed as what they call congestion pricing. So $20 to drive into Seattle. They haven't set a price tag on it, but these are some of the numbers I've been hearing. $20 if you want to drive into Seattle. So let's think about that for a minute. You are a working class person. You've had to buy a house in Marysville or in Kent because you cannot afford Seattle real estate. And then your sacrifice is your time. You have a long commute to get into the city, if that's where your job is. And a lot of working class jobs are in the city. Not just laborers, a lot of construction's going on, people who have to take their tools, their equipment in their panel vans. So there's a lot of construction workers, there's a lot of just lower income job people, the janitors, the food prep people in the big $1 million skyscrapers downtown. And so those people, if they do not have an option of transit, because as I've said, if you are a suburbanite and you have kids who do music and sports and you're trying to be active, maybe you coach your daughter's softball team, maybe you coach your son's basketball team. You try to be active, involved in your community, and you simply don't have the option of 2 hours on mass transit with transfers because we don't have mass transit that takes care of suburbanites getting into the city. So if it's $20 to come into the city, you got to do it 5 days a week, $100 a week, $5,000 a year for these working class suburbanites. A $5,000 transfer of money from you and your family to these dogs who are behind this whole program. So Seattle DOT, on their own website, admits that this is a plan to lead to more transit use. It does not in any way fit the lifestyle of people who live in the suburbs or rural areas and want to be actively involved in their kids' lives, but you work in the city. Again, not a surprise to any of my listeners, but proof of exactly what I've been telling you. So how are they going to do it? The Seattle Times says that they're modeling this after cities such as Stockholm, London, and Milan. which proves to me either what an absolute liar Jenny Durkin is, or, and I've always said that, she's a U.S. attorney, she's become mayor, she must be pretty smart. I'm not seeing any evidence of those smarts. So either this is just a really unintelligent person who's trying to push this on people, or it's an incredibly deceptive person, because in those European cities, they had fully built out transit systems. You cannot easily take mass transit from Snoqualmie to downtown Seattle. You can't do it. And so to compare us to those and say, I want to get this done in the next 2 years, when we have no infrastructure to take care of these suburban people, it's either just an evil money transfer plan, or it's an incredibly stupid plan. You pick which one it is. They say that they would draw a line. They're looking at 4 plans now. But ultimately, they are looking at one plan and one plan only. And I think you know by now that you can believe me over them. They say what they want is cordon pricing. So if you drive into a certain part of the city, you just pay a toll. You have to go into downtown Seattle, you pay the $20 or whatever amount they come up with. Now, ultimately, what they want is a transponder in every vehicle. The plan is to make this not just Seattle, but every road throughout the Puget Sound region. And it'll be inexpensive at midnight to go to the grocery store. It'll cost you a fortune during morning rush hour to go into Seattle. But it will be thousands of dollars per family per year transferred. It will not be a gas tax replacement. That is simply a lie. It would be the most massive tax increase in the history of Washington. And again, this will initially be voted on by people who live in Seattle, who never say no to a tax increase, because Seattle is dominated by people who want big socialist government. And the people who will be most affected will not have a vote. This is going to be taxation without representation, unless we can mobilize to fight this. Now, they also said they did a $200,000 study. The study is 4 months behind schedule. Imagine what the mess of implementing this would be. But they said they need protections to make the system fair. They said people who make over $75,000 a year will be more likely to pay the massive tolls than people who make under $50,000 a year. Really? People who make under $50,000 won't want to pay $5,000 a year in tolls to the Seattle government? Wonder why that would be. That's hard to even imagine. They also said that they need to take into account how it's going to impact people of color and lower income people. Imagine the level of bureaucracy. Imagine the number of six-figure jobs that will be needed to redistribute this money as they collect it from people who drive into the city who, are evil enough to make $75,000 a year or more. And then they will use that to give rebates to the 50,000 and under earners. Yeah, that's going to be a smooth transfer of money there, with government not skimming anything off the top. I'm sure about that. And they said they also will need discounts based on income and cash payments for those who don't have bank accounts or credit cards. Again, I don't foresee any bureaucracy attached to this. And then they will take the revenue, they claim, and spend it on transit and bike projects. So in other words, they'll tax families thousands of dollars a year today for improvements 20 years from now when they're done working. good investment for the people there. Oh, and I've got more. I'll give you more coming up in probably the big lead or two on an insane WSDOT survey that they're doing about all of this. But you and I must and can stop this. But it's going to be challenging because Seattle is going to try to impose this on all of the surrounding region. It's going to be a nightmare financially. Up next in the big lead.
The big lead, Bizarro World.
So Jay Inslee has declared a drought emergency for more than half of our state. Jay Inslee, how and why have you declared a drought emergency?
Because I have half a brain. I don't know, maybe.
Or maybe you're just lying about it to try to bolster your faltering presidential campaign. Big headline last week, Seattle Times, about Jay Inslee, and they had a map in the Times on the front page that showed how half of the state is in a drought. The blaring headline in the Seattle Times, drought declared for much of the state. And the Seattle Times even talked to the state meteorologist and said that he says there's a drought emergency. There's only one problem. The state meteorologist never said that. Cliff Moss, the professor of atmospheric sciences at the University of Washington, who uses data when he talks about what's going on, Cliff Moss says there is no drought emergency. When you look at our water levels, our reservoirs, snowpack, that it is all within a normal level of fluctuation. That, yes, it got warm for a week in March and melted part of the snowpack earlier than usual, but the snowpack was at normal levels this winter. The forecast is for a wetter than normal summer. So how and why would Jay Inslee declare a drought emergency? And that's where you're asking the feds for help. You're getting headlines in the Seattle Times. But why would the newspaper say that the state meteorologist said there was a drought when the state meteorologist says, I never said that? I'm going to talk to Cliff Moss, the professor of atmospheric sciences at the University of Washington, right after the bottom of the hour news. He will give us the data because he talked to the state meteorologist. And he says, yeah, he told me he never said that. So I know this is hard to believe that Jay Inslee and colluding media might be lying to try to push a phony climate agenda. I know that that's really hard to believe because they're usually so upstanding when it comes to this topic. But we'll talk to Cliff Moss about that right after the news at the bottom of the hour. Next up in the big lead.
The big lead, big local.
Got away for a little 4-day weekend, this Memorial Day weekend, and even as I was lounging out of state, I'm checking the local news. You know me. I like to stay on top of things. I like to be fully informed when I get back on the air. And we had a story this weekend about transients killing. And I'm wondering, Jay Inslee, Dow Constantine, Jenny Durkin, will you finally now do something about the transient problem now that they are killing in our region? I saw a tweet from Channel 4. A family of 4 transient orca whales attacked and ate a gray whale Saturday in Puget Sound near Whidbey Island as passengers on 2 nearby whale-watching boats watched in stunned amazement. Finally, a news story that may cause them to do something about the transient problem. Q13 talked to a boat operator who saw all this.
Either it had died already and they were eating it and found it, that day, or, this whale was really not doing very well and they could have killed it easily because of that.
Yeah. So all I can say, now that the transients are killing, Jay Inslee, just last week, you declared Washington to be a sanctuary state. We've got transients coming here killing. Jay Inslee, you have blubber on your hands. And finally, in the big lead.
The big lead. Top trending.
I just had to share this with you. That, as you know, big topic all around the country. Some states are getting more restrictive on abortion. Some states are really making it easier to kill babies in the late term. And what I had not heard until just now is the reason any restrictive abortion laws should never be implemented is because they're sexist. And I had never considered this point of view. They are sexist against men who might get pregnant.
And it's not just an attack on women, it's an attack on anyone who can or might get pregnant, including transgender men and gender non-conforming people.
Yes, so no new laws because it's sexist against all those pregnant men out there. Finally, the voice of reason in this whole debate. And that is your big lead for today.
The big lead on KIRO Radio.
Ursula's going to check the news, and then UW Professor Cliff Moss will join us. What was Jay Inslee thinking when he declared a drought emergency when there is none? Details straight ahead. Dori Monson Show.
This hour of the Dori Monson